Okay, let's make a start with this full-length tutorial. Now, if you're worried about drawing, don't sweat because I've got you. You can trace down from our free reference photograph, and I even provide you with a little outline, and I'll explain later on how you can obtain them. This is how I trace down my drawings, and if you'd like to know this in a bit more detail, there's a card on the top of your screen right now. These are the colours that I've chosen for this rose. I had them in my palette and they were screaming out at me to paint something really delicate and soft. So these are the colours that I'm using today. I'll link all of the materials in the description box underneath this video, but just a few colours for this one. And if you don't have them, don't worry, I'll give you alternatives as I work through. This is the palette that I use for mixing. This is by Etcher. It's a set of 2 and they are ceramic and super small and absolutely delightful to use, and they don't stain. Clean glass of water and some kitchen paper. The paper that I'm using is a rough surface today and it's a 300 GSM, and this one's made by Arches. This is actually a set of paints from Daniel Smith in this Schminke set in this little tin here, and I always swatch out my colours and I place them in each tin that I have and I match my colours this way, and there's a card on the top of your screen now if you'd like more information on that. I'm just going to be mixing up 3 colours to begin with. We have Shell Pink by Holbein first. Mix in Shell Pink with a little bit of Dusk Pink. This is by Rembrandt. This is a separating colour and is very, very special. I'll explain why as we work through. And a little bit of Quinacridone Burnt Orange by Daniel Smith. And I'm mixing a little bit more of that Shell Pink colour, and just to give a little bit more depth of colour there, along with Dusk Pink in the middle. We're going to be starting this painting by working wet in wet, by which I mean just applying the water to the outline where I want that particular colour to go. This is a great way of starting off your painting, and it just means that you can drop in your paint where you've put that water, and it's less scary to start off your painting, and also a really great way of building up your colours to begin with. You can see that I've added that Shell Pink at the top, and I'm adding the Shell Pink mixed with the Quinacridone Burnt Orange on the bottom. If you don't have Shell Pink, you could use a really, really watered down version of any red that you have, or even something like a Potter's Pink. And for the Quinacridone Burnt Orange, maybe something like a Burnt Sienna would work just as well, or any orange colour watered down. I'm just dropping in that Dusk Pink now just to see where I'm going with the colour. And next up, while we're waiting for that to dry, I'm going to mix, this is a rather unusual colour. This is Green Apatite by Daniel Smith. It's a granulating colour. You couldn't mix it up yourself, but if you haven't got this colour, you could use something like a very, very watered down version of Sap Green, and that would work just as well. I just happen to have it in my palette. Just dropping in that colour wet on dry this time, so I'm applying this all over the areas with my brush like this. The brushes I'm using today are from Rosemary & Co. They're from their Snowdrop range, and they are synthetic brushes with a fine point. They are pointed rounds and are just a joy to use. Along with my small eradicator brush, again from Rosemary & Co. And I'm using this to blend the colours together and lift off any areas, because we all make mistakes, right? Okay, so once everything is dry, and it really does have to be dry, you can see I'm using my brush to apply a tiny bit of that Dusk Pink from Rembrandt to the area, as you can see here. I have a small puddle of water in my palette, which I use to clean my brush rather than clean it in the jar. And the reason I do this is once you've cleaned your brush in the jar, you tend to get water running down the side of your brush and onto your painting. But by keeping a tiny little puddle in the palette, it just means that you're cleaning your brush without the bother of it running down the side of your brush into your painting and spoiling your work. Much easier way to do it, but it is important that you pat your brush dry before applying the clean brush onto the paper, otherwise it will sort of make your paint splurge, and you don't want that. So you can see at this point I'm applying my second layer of paint. This is Shell Pink on its own, just to build up the colours. Now with watercolour, it's all about building up your colours slowly. If you go in too thickly, too quickly, it will mean that your colours go sticky and muddy, and you don't want that look. But by applying your colours with care like this, it means that you can get the depth of colour that you need. So this is the quinacridone burnt orange going on, and just applying it to the areas that you can see here. But as I said, it's really important that you let each layer dry before applying the next, and thankfully with watercolour it doesn't take too long. So at the beginning of this video, I mentioned that we have a free reference photograph that you can see on screen here, as well as a simple outline so that you can trace down your drawings to join in. And there are a couple of ways that you can obtain them, so let's just take a look. We have a couple of ways that you can access our free reference photographs and line drawings. We have our very own private Facebook group, and as a member, you can access all of them here. There is another way, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. And in case you're not a Facebook fan, and I know it's not for everybody, I just want to reassure you that our group is really friendly, really helpful and informative, and you can also post up your finished paintings and have feedback from me and our other group members. You can see here some of the completed works in the student gallery. Having positive feedback from your paintings is a great way to learn and a really amazing confidence booster. If this is something that interests you, I'll put a link to the Facebook group in the description underneath this video. But if Facebook really isn't for you, then don't worry, because I'll put a screenshot of the line drawing and the reference photograph right at the end of this video. So be sure to stay right until the end and you can print it off that way. Okay, so be sure to stay right until the end of this video, where you can just pause the screen and you can pause the video and take a screenshot and print them out that way. These layers are now completely dry, so we need to start building up the darker values, so that's the darker colours. I have here mixed undersea green as well as the dusk pink that we used earlier. And by applying this in different ratios onto the already dry paint, you can start to build up the layers like this. In my palette here, I have undersea green on its own, and the middle colour is the undersea green with the dusk pink from Rembrandt. Undersea green is from Daniel Smith. It is one of these granulating colours that's really, really magical. If you use it wet in wet, you can see the colours separate into these kind of golden browny tones, and it's absolutely beautiful. I don't think it really does it justice wet on dry, but nevertheless, I love this colour so much I felt that I had to use it today. Once I've applied that first colour, as you can see me doing here, I'm leaving a tiny little gap between each of the segments, which will eventually form the veins of the leaf. So this is negative painting, so where we're painting around a shape to create a shape. Okay, so this is the undersea green, and I'll do the same on the other side, just following that sort of middle vein where we see it join into the stalk, just applying it wet on dry with that brush. This is a number 2 size pointed round, right as far as I need to go to that middle line, just keep on that little gap, and then I'll work around the vein like this, as I did on the other side. So this is just our second layer, and I'm using that damp brush to blend the colours into the existing wash. This time not taking the colour all over the leaf, because we want that first wash to be seen underneath. This time adding the mix of the dusk pink to that mix, so that we have an element of that pinky tone that's within the vintage rose. I felt that by merging these two together at this point, ready to build up later on, gives us a uniformity and makes it look really special. So we've got that darker value at the bottom and just working through like this. So you can see me here just dropping in the dusk pink mix with the undersea green, and you can see now how that purpley tone is blurring into that damp paint and giving it that really special magical look that we love. So if you haven't got dusk pink, you could use any sort of dark purpley colour that you have, or if you have got a Gallo paints as a colour that's very similar called Notturno, and you could use that instead. If you are struggling with any of the colours that I have and you don't have them within your own set, drop it in the comments below and I can try and help you as best I can based on the colours that you have. So I don't want you to feel that you can't join in if you don't have the colours that I'm using. So this is a full-length tutorial that we're painting today, as indeed are all of our tutorials here on YouTube. But if you really enjoy botanical painting and really want to level up your botanical painting game, then we do have a Patreon where every month I show you how to paint a different botanical painting. Now you won't find those here on YouTube. They are exclusive to my patrons and are in far more detail without those pesky ads. So let's just take a look. If you love botanical painting and want to know more, then head over to our Patreon. We have different membership tiers so that you can take your botanical painting to the next level. Every month we launch a brand new painting tutorial covering all things botanical to help you grow. The tutorials are exclusive to Patreon and are ad-free, so if you want to paint like this, then take a look. Link in description. So if that's something that interests you, then you might want to consider joining, and of course it's a way that you can support my channel. So as you can see here, I've dropped in another layer of that green apatite, and whilst that is still damp, I'm dropping in the mix of that darker green colour like this to give a bit of shade on the left hand side of that stalk. Now we do have full-length tutorials here on our YouTube channel every Tuesday. They are full-length tutorials and they are there in their entirety so that anyone can join in. I want to make art accessible to everybody. The Patreon tutorials are just for people who want to maybe level up, but you can still join in and have some fun by doing these tutorials right here with us on YouTube. If this is something that appeals to you, you may want to subscribe and click that little bell icon to stay updated. Also, if you are enjoying this video, please give me a big thumbs up. It's a way of letting YouTube know that you're enjoying my content, and I'd really appreciate your support. So carrying on with the process here, you can see that I'm just blending in those colours like this, adding a little bit more of that dusk pink by Rembrandt, that beautiful soft purpley tone. If you also, you could use maybe a soft brown tone instead if you wanted to do that, but any colour that's got that lovely muted tone, that's what we're looking for here. It's all about building up the colours slowly with this painting. You don't want to rush it. It's a kind of learn to paint as you paint approach to teaching. So anyone can join in with these tutorials no matter what your level. So even if you haven't painted before, there's no stress here. You can just follow along, pause the video. You can even slow it down if you want to. So we just want to get people painting and enjoying the process. Art is about having fun and without the stress. So this is what we're all about on our channel. So once again, everything's dry, and at the moment you can see those little veins that we painted around are looking a little bit stark. Also, I wanted to add some darker tones to the top part of that leaf, and I'm dropping in some of that darker value as before. Now this is the mix of the dust pink with the undersea green, so that we have that element of purple that kind of matches the purpley tones within the rose. Dropping it in once again onto the damp paint, so that's kind of like a wet on wet, and just merging those colours together. I wanted the bottom side of the leaf to be really, really dark to contrast against that beautiful pale, delicate rose. So these two colours work very, very well together, and you can see me just adding a little bit of detail here and there. Everything's now dry, and once again I've cleaned down my palette and added some water. Now it must be dry before you do this. I'm just going over the entire thing with a soft brush. This is a number 2 size, and just gently merging those colours together to kind of soften out that harsh line that we have on those negatively painted veins. And just by doing this, you can see very, very quickly that paint has gone over that line and softened it out. This is the dusk pink again, this time in a slightly thicker consistency, and starting to build up the colour again, dropping in more of that colour. Now, because watercolour is transparent, by and large, even though we have opaque colours, there is a transparency to watercolour, and you can see we've still got that green colour underneath, but by glazing over, by which I mean applying a colour on top of another colour, by glazing over that colour, we can see that beautiful dark green with that glorious pinky tone on the top, which really unifies everything. So once again, we're back to our original mixes now with our greens and our pinks and our quinacridone burnt orange. And you can see this is the kind of grey colour that I have here. Or if you have any kind of greyish tone in your palette, you can add this here. I wanted to add some of the shadows that we can see on the photograph. So just to recap, this colour is one of the greens. It could be undersea green or green apatite, it doesn't matter, with a tiny bit of the dusk pink and a tiny bit of the burnt orange to give it this muted grey tone. You could even use just the dusk pink on its own if you wanted to, but I wanted to add some of the darker tones here and there. I've kept the photograph in screen for you, and we are just using it as a reference point. We're not going strictly to the photograph, but I just wanted you to see what we're doing. Building up the colours as I work through. Just to let you know that we are also over on Instagram at The Wonders of Watercolour, you can see here, and if you want to join us there, I will link that in the description. We do a lot of behind the scenes stuff, and you can also have a sneaky peek of what's coming up on YouTube and Patreon. So do consider joining us there if you enjoy Instagram as much as I do. So carrying on with the process, just painting in these colours and layering up the colours as I feel I need to. And you can just kind of build them up, as I said, slowly and carefully without going overboard, just by adding these delicate hues and working them into the paper with that damp brush. This is my eradicator brush, and I'm using this damp just to blend the colours together. Because I've used a rough surface paper today, it does take a little bit more blending than perhaps an ordinary cold press or even a hot press paper. But I really love this paper. Anybody that's familiar with my channel and my work will know that I'm not a massive fan of hot press paper because of that smoothness. I just don't like it. But this is the other side of it. This is the rough surface paper, which I also really love. Here I'm mixing the, this is undersea green again, going into that mix, and I'm strengthening up the underside of that stem like this, once again working wet on dry, so that's straight onto the paper, and then using my damp brush to pat that paint into the existing paint that we've got to create that really soft edge. And I'm using the tip of my brush to outline the upper side of this little leaf here to give it some more dimension. It's entirely up to you how much detail you want to put on. I've just added a few little thorns here. There were one or two on the photograph, and I think I've added a couple more there just to give it a little bit more realism. And I'm now outlining the outside of the other part of the stem and strengthening up that leaf. I've just strengthened up the little spiky parts on the leaf here just to make them look a little bit more realistic and sharpen them up. And I really like that look. So at this point, it is just a case of carrying on the process and building up the layers one by one in just the same way as I have done throughout this tutorial. So I'm going to stop talking now and let you watch the rest of this video in peace, listening to some lovely music. But if you are interested in painting roses and you really enjoy them, we have quite a few rose tutorials here on YouTube, and I'll put one right at the end of this video so that you can click through to that one and watch it after this one if you want to. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to hit that subscribe button and that bell notification, and give me a thumbs up if you've enjoyed it. And thank you once again for watching. Stay until the end so that you can have access to the line drawing and the reference photograph. And once again, thank you, and I'll see you next time.